Howdy y'all, Caleb here, and today we're talking about Source Warriors. I did a video recently about how I would fix Koatl's Claw and Saurus, and maybe we don't need to. I still think they need a little bit of a push up, but this new edition with the General's Handbook that's coming out here pretty soon, I think Saurus has some plays now, and we'll get into that, some of the buffs, and what we can do with them. Quickly, if you've never looked at the Source Warriors Warscroll, because they haven't seen the table all that often recently, let's go over a few things real quick for the Source Warriors. They do have a 5-inch move, a little slow in today's Age of Sigmar, a 4-up save, but they are -1 damage when you're playing them in Coalesced or with Thunderlizards or Koatl's Claw. So don't let the 4-up save scare you off. That's not the best save we've got in the game now, but with that -1 damage, you can make these guys pretty tanky. Bravery of 8, which is good for Coalesced, and 1 wound each. Before, we've had lots of discussions about their melee weapon profile. Do you take the clubs or the spears? And it used to be you would take the clubs if you're running these guys in minimum units, or you take the spears if you're running them as a big group. With the new attacking and ranks for this new season of the GHB, there's really no reason to take spears. Clubs, you'll get to fight in 2 ranks. Spears, which that was the only purpose for taking them, was to be able to fight with that second rank, now really don't have a purpose. You might find some corner uses for them if you're trying to hit over the top of your enemy and fight somebody behind their front line or something, but you're not going to get very far back. So I'm still taking clubs. Getting that -1 rend with those clubs and being able to fight with 2 ranks is just awesome. So we're definitely in the Source Warrior Club territory right now. We also have Jaws. Oh, so clubs, they hit on 4s and 3s. Not the best attack profile there. -1 rend, 1 damage. But there's lots of ways to get that to hit up to a 3-up to hit. In Koatl's Claw, you charge or you spend a command point to act like you charged, and you can get it. Or there's always all-out attack, which you get to +1 to hit. So we do have a couple of buffs here. You get 1 extra attack from the Source Alpha, -1 bravery for your enemies when you're within range. Reroll your charges. And this one here is the big one. Add 1 to your attacks of the Celestite clubs or spears when you have 15 or more models. And so this really helps us play into this horde meta that's coming up. When we're taking multiple reinforced unit of warriors, you're going to be able to stay above that 15 amount to get those extra attacks. So when you're doing that and you're in Coalesce or Koatl's Claw, you're going to be getting 2 attacks with your clubs and 2 attacks with your jaws because you get extra jaw attacks in Coalesce. So each warrior is going to get to have 4 attacks, and when you're attacking in ranks, you're going to get lots of attacks out of these guys. It turns out to be pretty good when you can fight with a lot more stuff. Their average damage isn't really all that impressive. Here's 10 of them. You're doing 4 damage. Not that great. That's partially because you don't have as many attacks. You need those extra attacks. But really, warriors are all about the numbers, and in Seraphim, you're all about those synergies. So let's hit quickly on this Bonds of Battle. This is the new rule in this upcoming GHB. When a model in a Galician Veterans unit makes an attack, you can target a unit. It's a bunch of text here. You can fight with the second rank. You can read the text here if you need to. You can fight with that second rank. And that's big for these warriors. You're going to get a lot more warriors in. They're on big bases. They're on 32mm bases. So you're going to be able to get a lot more in. You see here, my quick picture there shows that in a unit of 30, I think it's going to be fairly easy to get in about 20 of those. If you stretch out your line just 2 ranks deep, you're talking 15 wide. I don't know that there's going to be a whole lot of instances where you can get all 15 in, which would also pull in the second rank of 15. So for the math in this section, I'm going to go with 20 warriors out of the 30 get into attack. I think that's a realistic number. You can get some crazy damage numbers if you use all 30. There will be cases where that will happen. Enjoy that. But I think more realistically, getting a full 10 in line with the enemy so that you can fight 10 in the first rank and 10 in the second rank is more likely. When we just do that, no buffs on here, you know, we're getting 12 damage against the 4-up save with those guys. It's not really that impressive. It's not very good. As in most Seraphim stuff, you have to apply synergies to make these War Scrolls any good. Some armies, they have good War Scrolls just on the face. Ours, you got to put some work into them to make them good. So let's talk about some of the buffs we have for warriors. So there's some that are going to cost a command point, and there's some that won't cost anything. And so anytime you can lean into the ones that don't cost anything, do that, because it's just easy to get those synergies off. You don't have to worry about resources of like command points. You don't have to worry about, a lot of times you don't have to worry too much about your ranges in combat because you've applied some of these before it. So those are always really good to apply. So we do have the Koatl's Claw. We can get a +1 to hit. It costs us nothing as long as your unit is charging. So if you're going pure Saurus and you want to go Koatl's Claw, it's an easy way to get those pluses to hit. Koatl's Claw is a little outdated. It needs to have some of the stuff updated to really play in this new edition. But a +1 to hit, a free +1 to hit, isn't bad. It will come in handy quite often. But you don't have to go to Koatl's Claw just to get that +1 to hit. Unfortunately, a lot of our Saurus abilities are all +1 to hits as well. This is where we need some of these things to be rewritten. We do have a lot of command points that will do that same thing in Koatl's Claw. All out attack. The Koatl's Claw command ability also does +1 to hit. Our Saurus Old Blood, our Saurus Old Blood on Carnosaur, our Saurus Eternity Warden all give a +1 to hit. So there's lots of different ways to get that. If you're not playing in Koatl's Claw, there's plenty of other ways to get that +1 to hit. A unique one now that I think is gonna see a lot of play with what we're gonna, with as much as we're gonna be putting in the Source, the Source Sunblood is very interesting now. You get a +1 to wound, and that you can apply to a Source unit in Koatl's Claw who has +1 to hit from charging. Now, Source Sunblood probably won't see play if you're using Source over in Thunderlizards, because you're probably going to use that command point on a +1 to hit or something. But in Koatl's Claw, Sunblood has a good role now because we have enough attacks we're pumping up with these warriors that +1 to hit and +1 to wound is significant now. We do have 6s to hit are an extra hit. That comes from our Scarvet on Cold One or the Scarvet on Carnosaur. You know, if you're running a Carnosaur, it can be nice to have, but it's pretty much the same as a +1 to hit. So you can use a +1 to hit on one unit, a 6s to hit explode on another unit, Koatl's Claw charge on another unit. So if you have enough command points, you can buff quite a few things up in the combat phase. But the number one thing that we're probably going to be using with all of our Source units isn't even Saurus. That's right. It is the Skink Star Priest. Just fantastic buffs for those units that have weight of attacks. So Skink Star Priest has an incredible spell, Hand of Glory. Has access to that since it's a Skink Wizard. That lets you reroll hit rolls of 1, which is fantastic when you have a ton of attacks coming out of a unit. Also, the Serpent Staff, you just point it at a unit. You don't have to do anything special. You just point it at somebody and say, they get this buff. And you can pass that around to multiple units. So, like, or not with the same hero, but if you have multiple Star Priests, you can give one the Serpent Staff to that unit, and your other Star Priest can give the Serpent Staff to another unit. So this is a staple for Source lists going forward. It has lost its scaly skin, so Skink Star Priests are going to be even easier to snipe out of our lists, which was always the priority target number 1 in our previous lists. It will probably continue to be priority target number 1 in the current list, and it just got a little bit easier to snipe out. But these are the buffs that you can put on them that I think are useful. You can also get Starseer, which will give your opponent -1 to their save. You can do Purple Sun, which is also another -1 to save for your opponent. So you can get some other buffs here, but I'm looking at buffing up this actual unit. And which one of these can we overlay on top of each other? If you're in Koatl's Claw, you can hit that +1 to hit for free, +1 to wound, and you can apply both of those buffs in the hero phase. So you can get 4 of these buffs on the same unit throughout your turn. If you're not in Koatl's Claw, you're going to have to choose between +1 to hit and +1 to wound. You'll obviously go +1 to hit on those, but the Skink Star Priest buffs are the same there and will be fantastic. So we got some buffs, so let's work through our buffs here and see what we can do with our warriors. Here's our 20 Source Warriors out of our 30 that are attacking, and we're in Coalesce. We get +1 jaw attack, and we're either applying all-out attack or Koatl's Claw +1 to hit on the charge, and we're at a respectable 17 damage versus a 4-up save. Now, that's not great when you're talking this is, 315 points for this unit. But it's better than it was because we're able to get more of these in. But remember here, as we go through these numbers, there's going to be a lot of stuff doing a lot of damage in this edition. Source Warriors, we're going to be able to get a lot more damage out of these Source Warriors, but everything's going to be getting a lot more damage because everything's going to be fighting in 2 ranks. So remember that as we get up to some of these crazy numbers here, that I think the damage in Age of Sigmar is going to go sky high here in this next edition. So that's our standard buff there. Nothing special. I think when we add our Skink Star Priest and its 2 buffs, reroll hit rolls of 1 and mortal wounds on 6s, this is kind of my standard loadout. If I've got a unit of 30 warriors, I've got a Skink Star Priest next to it to apply this every single turn I have so that this thing can put out some damage. Because once you look at it, it's doing almost 30 damage versus a 4-up save, which is fantastic. That's in the current edition, the previous edition here, that was what I would be hunting for. About a point of damage for every 10 points. So 30 damage from this unit is awesome. That's doing great here. But as I said, I think a lot of the damage is going higher in Age of Sigmar in this next edition. With all these hordes that are getting to fight in ranks, things are gonna get destroyed. So can we go higher than 30? Of course we can. If we go into Koatl's Claw for this, and now we've got our +1 attacks from the Coalesced, +1 to hit from Koatl's Claw, because I'm assuming we're charging. We've got our Skink Star Priest staff and the reroll hit rolls of 1, and now we're spending a command point in our combat phase to get the +1 to wound. And so we've got our +1 to hit for free from Koatl's Claw, and now we're getting our +1 to wound from the Sunblood. And it makes a difference. It's not a huge difference, but it makes a little bit. You get about an extra 5 damage out of that. But it'll just keep adding up. So that Sunblood is nice, not required for this, because it's giving us a good bump, but not as much as some of the other buffs that we can. But we're going to keep stacking them on here. I think these are like we've gone from your standard buffs to these are your like expert player buffs. These are the things that everything is lined up for you perfectly. All the rolls happened, and you're gonna look brilliant when these things go off. So we've got all those other buffs we've talked about. Our command point we're spinning the combat phase from the Sunblood, but we've also got Curse off on the unit that we're attacking. So we're doing 6s to hit equal mortal wound. This is probably from an Engine of the Gods. That's our best unit to apply this with. And anything that we can get tagged with that and we're throwing a ton of dice at is fantastic. We can also get a buff to this prayer just by being close to terrain, get it off on a 3-up. Just fantastic. Now we've got our warriors doing 50 damage versus a 4-up save. Can we go higher? Yes, we can. Let's go a little crazy here. All that, we're adding a -1 to save against the enemy. This could either come from the Purple Sun, which gives a -1 to save. That's cheaper than a Starseer. A Starseer might be a little more reliable because it can't be dispelled. Although they'll have a chance to unbind your spell. So yeah, probably about the same. So you get -1 to save. That bumps us up a little bit, basically just giving us extra rend to our attacks is what that basically does. So now we're at 57. Can we go higher? Yes. This is just like insane amounts of damage here. This is every single buff you could possibly do. I mean, this is all legal buffs, but everything's going right for you. So we're putting warriors in the bounty hunters. So we get +1 damage to veterans. So now we're throwing a ton of dice at the opponent, and they're doing 2 damage each. plus all these mortal wounds on hits and wounds. We've buffed up our hit +1 and our wound +1, and we're rerolling hit rolls of 1. So just we are buffing this unit to the nines and sending it in to the enemy veterans, and we're doing almost 90 damage versus a 4-up save. That's insane. Hey, let's say you're going up against a 2-up save. You're still doing 60 damage versus a 2-up save. So that's pretty crazy. It's possible, because all these buffs, you can stack all these things on top of each other. So it's not out of the realm of possibility, but probably not very likely. I think what our typical loadout is probably somewhere in this range. You've got a +1 to hit, you've got Skink Star Priest buffing it up, and you've got the extra attacks from Koatl's Claw. That's about 30 damage. That will kill most things in the game, unless it's just safe stacked, to heaven, or it's an incredible tanky unit. So I like this because it shows me that warriors can do damage now. Now, we'll see if this actually evens out to where everything is doing damage in this edition, and this kind of is at the bottom tier. But 30 damage from 20 Saurus warriors here, that's perfect. That's I love that. That's what I'm looking for. That will blend a lot of stuff. What about Starborn, though? I ran the numbers just to see what Starborn would look like. You miss out on one of the jaw attacks, but it's still not bad. You're getting 24, 25 damage versus a 4-up save. So you can teleport these warriors if you wanted to in Starborn. Buff them up with the Skink Star Priest. Teleport them somewhere, and they've got a natural reroll on their Warscroll. But even if you're not worried about getting them into combat, they're a good unit to take an objective. So maybe it has some play in Starborn. I don't know. I think I'm gonna stick to coalesce with the warriors there. Oh, okay. What about some lists? So I made up 2 lists. One for Thunderlizard. We've got our Thunderlizard here. On this one, I'm going to focus on the warriors as my expert conquerors. That's the battalion that lets them count as 3 on objectives. So each of these big blocks of warriors will count as 90 on an objective. And then they're going to be backed up by some Stegodons in Thunderlizard to kind of do my damage in bounty hunters. So let's look quickly at the list. My general is a Stegodon with Skink Chief. He's got Prime War Beast. I did take a Command Entourage battalion to give an extra artifact, so I can give Cloak of Feathers to my Stegodon Chief. Skystreak Bow, Beastmaster Mount trait, give him extra attacks or make him run faster if he needs to. And so that Stegodon with Skink Chief, that's kind of our standard loadout for the Stegodon. Makes him pretty awesome in melee and can shoot. Pretty versatile role there. Our Slann Starmaster has Stellar Tempest to bust some hordes up. He'll be the one generating our command points for us. A Skink Star Priest with Fusel, just because we've got to throw that on somebody. Hand of Glory there. Another Skink Star Priest with Tide of Serpents. That's another horde busting spell. So we are going to be pretty good at busting these hordes up with 2 spells that will do mortal wounds on 5s for every model in that unit. So that's pretty awesome. Then we've got our 2 blocks of Saurus Warriors, all with clubs. Thankfully, all mine have clubs. Both of those are reinforced and putting those in Expert Conquerors so that they can hold objectives for me. And then I've got 2 Stegodons in Bounty Hunters. They can go in Bounty Hunters because they're battle lined in Thunderlizards. And so kind of a unique little trick there. We're going to have a video on Stegodons in Bounty Hunters. They get pretty fun in Bounty Hunters there. So that is 2,000 points exactly right now. That is with the increased cost of the Stegodon. That's 105 wounds, 8 drops, which drops are going to go a lot higher in this new edition, I think, with Bounty Hunters and Expert Conquerors. You're going to have a lot of people taking those. So I'm not too worried about drops anymore. I like the extra artifacts we've got, and I love those 2 battalions. Expert Conquerors and Bounty Hunters for our units are just fantastic. We're not going to be too worried about people hitting us with Bounty Hunters because we're just going to reduce that damage back down by 1. So I'm not too worried about getting hit by Bounty Hunters, but I love putting my stuff in Bounty Hunters. So we've got our warriors here to tank objectives, but they're also going to put out a lot of damage. And then we've got our Stegodons to go in with the Stegodon Skink Chief to smack some stuff around. So, it's a Thunderlizard list without a Bastiladon in it, but I just wanted those 2 battalions too much. We'll see if that's any good or not. We've got plenty of time to figure that out. One more list. I did do a Koatl's Claw list here, and we've got this one I'm going all Saurus for the most part. So trying to keep it into Koatl's Claw, but I do have a Scarven on Carnosaur because you kind of have to have a Carnosaur in a Koatl's Claw list. He's got the War Spear. He is a general, so he gets Dominant Predator and Eviscerating Blade. Those two will give you more command points and give you some mortals on its attacks. Beastmaster, so it can get extra attacks or run and charge if it needs to. I did take a command entourage here, and I gave my Slann Starmeister a Dixie Grub so it can reroll a spell, and I think that one heals it 1 per turn. So just gives my Slann a little bit of extra utility in this list. 2 Skink Star Priests, as should be in every warrior heavy list now, with Hand of Glory and Tide of Serpents, of course. And then we've got our Saurus Sunblood to give that juicy +1 to wound for our warriors. And the 2 warriors, I put again in Expert Conquerors. I was struggling here. If I put them in Bounty Hunters, which could be fun, now, they're going to be doing a lot more damage. But I ended up going with Expert Conquerors. I put 2 units of Knights in my Bounty Hunters because Knights are pretty fun in Bounty Hunters too. They each have 7 attacks each, and when they all have 7 attacks, they're just 1 damage. But now in Bounty Hunters, you can get them up to 2 damage. They'll be pretty good at taking on some of these veteran units. You might have a problem where they might spend that realm command point. They would have to roll a 6 to make the Knights fight last. So I'm not too worried about that. Might happen every once in a while, but if it does, it's just a unit of Knights. It's not a big deal. And then I am backing it up with the Bastildon, which is kind of odd in a Koatl's Claw list, but it fit, and you got to have a little bit of shooting somewhere. I'm not really spending much invested in this to buff it up. It's going to be on the back lines. It's going to be a monster for me. It's going to be shooting across the top. So not a focus in this list, but very nice to have. And then I've still got 35 points left over for an endless spell if I want it, or if I'm fishing for that inspired triumph, you can. There are some decent endless spells. Not a lot for 35 points. You got Burning Head, which I think would be a good add to this to kind of top off your list. But there's a Koatl's Claw list for you. So anyway, Warriors. I'm pretty excited to get to play some Warriors. On paper, they seem pretty good. I don't think I'm ever going to get that many buffs on them. It's possible, but I'm looking more, in this range here where we're buffing these up a little bit, doing respectable damage to whatever we're hitting, and able to stick around for quite a while because of Coalesced and Scaly Skin still applying. So, all right, guys, let me know what you think. Warriors, are you playing them? Or are you going with Guard or Knights? We'll be talking about them too. So, all right, guys, we'll see you on the next one.